Name, please, last name and work.
Last name and what?
Hmm?
Last name?
Yeah.
What was it? I'm sorry.
Well, first and last, just so we know who it is. If you look at I have a few agendas out there. There's only one item on it today. And if you'll notice, public comment has been eliminated from the front end of the meeting. So if you have something to say, you'll have to hang around until we're finished. Our sole purpose today is to go over the third rendition of this draft. Okay, and basically I've reformatted it because it is a police power ordinance for enforcement. Policy, we have to, on a citation, reference book, chapter, and verse, which would be the ordinance itself, the article, and the article subsection of any infraction. And that would be on a ticket. So it's also easier to notify an owner, property owner, of a violation, so that they can look up that exact section and understand exactly why they were cited. So we'll go through this line by line when everybody's ready. Like I said, there's copies of also on the back side of that, there are some facts and evidence, the reason we're doing this. And this has been like 2 years in the making, so I hope to get it done today. It'll go legal after this for one more trip, and then be presented on the 15th for an up or down vote by the board. Then I got 956. You up and running?
So, and we have, Dr. King. And so far, and I know there were a few others who were going to be looking for it, so I'm not sure why they're not on here yet.
Haven't really put it up. You're running out of copy, so anybody else? Does anybody not have a copy of it?
There's an extra one.
That one's fine.
Pardon, John. I would connect.
Anybody want to push him? Be here a while.
Oh, that's.
No, thank you. Yeah, 5:20.
Just because it's warm. Warmer.
You got auto.
Sorry, gosh.
Anybody want to speak?
Thank you.
In case anybody's wondering. These are emails. About 2 months worth.
Hi, Dave. Glad you made it.
I'd like to address the board before this meeting starts. Like most of you, if not all, I've lost a lot of sleep over this. You know, I've came to the conclusion, short-term rental is a bad idea for this township. And what we're doing is just going to multiply that. As far as being bad, we've got international buyers looking at houses so they can start this up, okay? When this comes to a vote, after it comes back from the lawyer, I want everybody to know I'm a no vote on this. We need to enforce what we have right now. Short-term rental does not belong in a single-family residential district. That's all I have to say.
That'll be addressed today. Six. What, so Joe left? Yeah. Okay. Have more copy here, so. We're ready? Okay. Guess we can start early. I don't see anybody else showing up.
10:01 according to my clock.
You got 10,
10:01.
10:01. Okay, why is mine off then? Okay, let's call meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge. One nation. Liberty and justice for all. Roll call, recognition of business.
Okay, Joe Keys, absent. Greg Bradley,
Yeah.
Tom Backers,
Yes.
Joanne Childs, Christine Johnson here. Do we count him absent or left?
Basically absent. He's not here to roll call, so he's absent.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, people on Zoom, I assume.
Mhm. 6 people right now on Zoom. And it's like one on Facebook.
Okay, disclosure of conflicts. I have none. I have none.
I have none.
Approval of the agenda, there's one item on, all in favor, aye.
I,
Opposed. Okay. But before we start, the purpose of this meeting is to address the STR situation, which is pretty much out of control. Then is about to get worse. In the age of technology, we have people from out state and individuals from out of the country asking about property in Clearwater Township because we do not regulate at the moment. Purpose of this meeting is to come up with a final draft that we can live with, that we can enforce. So that, we at least have some control over the number of STRs, where they're located at, and some restrictions, most of which are common sense. Okay, we also have a noise ordinance that we can enforce. Along with this is a police powers act, so it is enforceable. So, we can, actually take people to court if we need to. So, line by line, the red letter edition has been formatted as a police powers ordinance, like I said before. We have, several options here. We can either do nothing, which means everybody running a short-term rental in this time is in violation unless they live on the property and run from that property in violation of ordinance 22. It's a commercial business. If you're operating a commercial business, according to ordinance 22, home occupation, you have to be living on that property. So right now, 98.5%, I would imagine even more, of STRs in Clearwater Township are illegal and have been. We're trying to solve that. Okay, so we have an amendment to 22 that would allow short-term rentals in Clearwater Township that will be passed if this draft is approved along with the draft, and will take effect after it's published, I believe in 30 days. So if we get this approved at the February meeting on the 15th, by the Ides of March, it will be legal and we can enforce it. The other thing is, there is a section in here for residential R1 that we may have some adjustments to make. Okay, simply because the residential districts are the ones that are suffering, Crystal Beach, Harwood Trail, and the like, parking, noise, and overcapacity. So, all right, without this, we can't do anything except to enforce ordinance 22, and we don't have the money or the police power. And like I said, this has been going on for 50, 60, 70 years, and probably since homesteading days, when people came up here and got their 160 acres or whatever, and decided that they'd build a cabin on a lake and rent it out. They'll pay the taxes. So I understand the legacy end of it. The other thing is the community, the residential sections, okay, trying to maintain some sanity during the summer months. This ordinance provides funding for extra help, whether it's a community safety officer to help enforce the ordinance, or pay extra hours for the police, the sheriff, to enforce the ordinance. Also, the administrative costs, which will most likely have to be farmed out to property management specialists just to handle the paperwork that's created by this thing. This is a nightmare. So without further ado, let's get started. You can follow along if you have a copy. If you don't, try and share with your neighbor. And here we go. Any questions from the board before we get started?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you guys, have you utilized Airbnb at all in your travels?
I have,
No, I know my family, some of my family knows.
Okay, have you? Is it typically a long term, or is it, I mean,
The
like,
one we use, the whole community is a short term with building.
I mean, what I mean by that is,
The length of stay.
is it like a one night stay? Is it a week long stay? Is it,
We did a 5-day.
you did a 5-day?
For us, it depends on what you're running, you can, some people
Where
can
you're
only
going.
run it in 7 days.
Well, my husband and I, in our travels, we typically, would stay one night. So we traveled from Michigan up through Canada and all the way over to Maine and all the way down and all the way back, and we stayed in a different place every night.
Was it a hotel?
And so it was Airbnb, one night, short-term rental. And so we just get on the Airbnb app, we look for something in the area that we're at and pick one that we like, rent it for the night, and then move on to the next location. So I, for one, appreciate Airbnb because it does make that possible without paying the cost of a hotel, which can be pretty ridiculous. I mean, I guess if you're staying in a touristy area such as Torch Lake or Charlevoix, you're gonna pay probably a little bit more. And you probably don't have a whole lot of just overnight stays for that. It's more of a vacation location, but a lot of people would only stay for a weekend or a week at most.
I do understand. If you notice, the restrictions are for R1 only, all right, anything else with this? If we adopt this, we make legal short-term rentals in the entirety of Clearwater Township. The restrictions that are specified in this red letter grant are for residential one only. Okay, and I'm sure we'll have some comments and adjustments to make to that portion of the draft, so.
So you're saying forest residential and multifamily residential? And then village residential?
Village, yes, anything, R1 is specifically, addressed, simply because our planning commission wanted it and, the majority of the neighbors, either across the street in the Crystal Beach or along Highway Trail, have requested that something be done to.
Can you speak up, sir? I can't hear.
Oh,
I'm done now.
Okay, basically, this is from the neighbors for, residential one only. To, put some sort of cap on the number of weeks. The number of people, number of cars, and how many weeks per month. They can rent as a short-term rental. In other words, the suggestion was for a break period, 1 week a month. All right, this gets into the financial status of some of the property owners, especially the local ones that that rely on this money.
so you're looking at Crystal Beach Road and Arwood. Those are,
Basically R1, any R1 district. If we want to get any more detailed than that,
all right, so your R1 restrictions would apply to anybody that lives on Wilhelm. That wants to do a
yes,
short-term
exactly.
rental.
Okay,
Okay.
but what I'm saying is, if you live in a recreational zone,
Mhm.
agricultural, forest, you can still operate your B and B without restriction. In other words, 52 weeks a year, 7 days a week. Okay,
B and B is a completely different zoning.
now I know B and B is a bed and breakfast.
Bed and breakfast.
Okay,
yeah.
that implies
This
that
is,
the proprietor
these
lives.
are only the homes that people don't live in, right?
Right,
Okay,
right. Okay, secondary homes.
secondary homes.
Legacy homes, that type of deal. Okay, so the format was taken basically from the zoning ordinance, just because it was easy to duplicate. I did adjust the preamble a little bit. Okay, if you look at the preamble of the last line, this ordinance shall not apply to use of property by the property owners and their guests. Okay, if you are using that property say you own, something on Crystal Beach on the water,
Mr. Chair,
yes,
can I just respectfully request that you address the board and not the public?
okay. All right,
This is
so,
for us to go through.
yes, that's true too.
Thank you.
All right, anyway, so what I'm trying to get across here is for personal use of, any short-term rental, this ordinance doesn't apply. So if you're gonna have your family up for a week or two in the summertime at, a home, here that you normally rent out,
Mm.
okay, then this doesn't apply to, that instance. Okay, short title is, self-explanatory. The ordinance applies to any dwelling unit. When we get to definitions, you will notice I have modified and added the definition of a dwelling unit to include recreational vehicles and towable camper trailers.
You did include that.
Okay,
in
for
the-
the purposes of this ordinance only.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was gonna say, when we travel, you never know what we're gonna stay in.
Right,
But one time we stayed on a llama farm in a shed, and they had a bedroom in there, and they had a little kitchenette in there. The bathroom was in the main house. You had to walk across the yard through the llamas. And it was fantastic. We absolutely loved it. It was so unique. So, I
Wow.
mean,
that's basically, you remember the geodomes on Pine Circle
yeah,
that we had removed. That's what the purpose of that was. The owner of that place had places, I believe in, India and, by the Himalayan mountains, Alaska, Mexico, and he was gonna do the same thing here. So we put a stop to that, but, that was because the buildings didn't conform to the Michigan building.
Mm.
Okay, interpretation purposes of this ordinance are to promote the public health, safety, peace, and general welfare of the inhabitants of Clearwater Township. We are here representing Clearwater Township. I want to make sure everybody understands that.
That's why I sent you the Charlevoix example, because I like the way they start theirs out, just this wording. Short-term rentals can provide vast economic benefit to property owners, businesses, and employees in the tourism industry through the expanded number of visitors and travelers to our community, which is great. However, negative externalities can occur to neighborhoods, housing availability, and health and safety practices if transparent and fair standards are not established. I just like that wording because it's saying we want to be fair to everyone, and we
Right.
see that there are benefits and we see that there are problems, and we need to address both sides.
Okay, well, what we could do is include that language somewhere in 201 or 202. Okay, so if you would like
Did you go
to,
through the applicability already? It did just on the front page,
applicability, that is 102.
yeah.
Okay, well, we could include it there too.
Well, I think it should be actually in the title, but not the title, but the top, your first,
Basically the preamble.
yeah, preamble. I guess that's what you're calling it, preamble.
Okay, so what we would do,
Incorporate that.
and this is the shuttle line,
Mhm.
it's that in there, preamble, shuttleway preamble. So we would insert that, just before this ordinance shall not apply for the use of property by the property owner. Because I want that line
Yeah, absolutely.
last on. Okay,
Okay.
Charlotte preamble would be an insert here. With the appropriate. Mention. That's so mentioned. This ordinance imposes a greater restriction upon the use of buildings on or premises that are imposed or required by such existing provisions of law or ordinance or by such rules.
Where are we?
Okay, we are on page 2, section 1 in applicability.
Okay.
Copy this ordinance and any minutes thereto, but it shall be kept on file as a matter of public record in the office of the township clerk. It would also,
I still can't find where you're at. 2.01. 2.02.
yeah, 2.0.
If you can just,
Yeah.
state where you're at, so
Yeah.
everybody.
Oh,
can
okay,
follow, please.
I'm on the wrong page.
Oh, okay.
The ones that you handed out this morning, are these the same ones that you're reading from?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So for clarification, you said red letter, but I'm not seeing any red
I haven't
letters.
seen either.
That's the copy you printed.
I wasn't able to print any.
What's that?
Would you like my red?
Is yours
letter
red?
copy?
Okay,
Yeah.
mine did not print red.
Mine didn't either.
Okay, you could trade. Well, that way he can follow along when we get to the red letter section. You'll understand what's
Sorry
that.
about that.
I wasn't able to print either.
Oh, you have notes on this stuff.
That's okay.
That's all right.
It's just the very
We're all taking notes.
Yeah.
Okay, so, the purpose of this was basically taken from zoning ordinance. I didn't make any changes to it, it's self-explanatory.
Okay, so the beginning is,
I wanted to do that, simply because item 2 under purpose, to provide for the protection and preservation of the high quality of our lakes, rivers, streams, and wells. That implies septic systems.
Sorry, where are you?
We're on, Article 2, 201, subsection 2,
purpose.
which is basically, this is a carbon copy of the boilerplate in the zoning ordinance. So most of this, once we get to definitions, we'll start making some changes. 202, scope. It is not intended by this ordinance to repeal, annul, or in any way impair, interfere with existing provisions of law or ordinance. Basically, that's the gist of that.
All right, can we hold for a second?
Certainly.
Any questions on that first purpose part? The 2.01? No questions on that?
Okay, moving on. Yeah,
We just wanna.
basically, it's just a general statement of why we're doing this.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay, 202 scope. Purpose and intent of sections of this ordinance pertaining to the regulation of short-term rental businesses is to regulate the location and operation of, but not to exclude, okay, the conduct of owners and renters.
Could these just be read out loud, really loud, so everybody can hear as we go through?
I
Is
suppose.
everybody able to hear when he's reading? If we were to read each one out loud so you can hear,
Well, that's what I'm trying to,
That's,
other than the standard stuff.
so we can hear, no, for me too.
yeah.
Okay,
To hear.
evidently I'm not projecting enough.
Right. Some of us are older.
Okay, copy of this ordinance and any amendments thereto shall be kept on file as a matter of public record in the office of the township clerk. Article 3, districts.
Oh, hold on.
Okay, you wanna,
By the time you're just skipping through stuff and I'm not even having a chance to
okay,
find where you're at before you're finished reading and moving on.
Is it
right,
okay if Christine were to read it? Would you like to read it?
I can read it.
okay.
Thank you.
Give me a second just to catch up real quick.
Stop
It's
you
not
when
intended
you're,
By this
when we get
ordinance.
to something we need to address.
Interfere with existing provisions of law or ordinance.
It's been driving me crazy for 2
Okay,
months.
so the scope is saying this is not gonna take away from our regular zoning, is that my understanding?
That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that I was understanding what that was saying.
Okay,
I'm not familiar with this stuff, so be patient with me. I'm learning
Mhm.
zoning. It's not something that I ever knew. So I want to know what it's saying before I am gonna agree to it.
Mhm.
So,
okay, in section 202, part 2.
mhm,
Okay, I did modify the original language to include short-term rental businesses, which is what they are.
okay.
Any other questions?
The purpose and intent is to regulate the location and operation, but not to exclude. Oh, conduct of owners and renters.
Right,
What does that mean?
Can you read that out loud, Christine?
The
please?
purpose and intent of the sections of this ordinance pertaining to the regulation of short-term rental businesses is to regulate the location and operation of, but not to exclude, conduct of owners and renters. What does that mean, but not to exclude?
it means that it also applies to the conduct of the owners, property owners, and their renters.
Okay,
It doesn't exclude the conduct of their operation or their clientele. Okay, that is included in the violation section 6 of this ordinance. Continue.
all right. A copy of this ordinance and any amendments thereto shall be kept on file as a matter of public record in the office of the township clerk. That should be a given. But,
Right, well, it's
so people know.
a matter of record.
All right, section 3, application. This ordinance applies to all land use districts. Now, you just got done saying that it's only R1.
No. It applies. Short-term rentals, once we adopt this, will be legal and regulated
Okay.
across the entire township. So if you have a farm,
Okay,
okay, with a guest house on it, you can rent that out in an agricultural district,
okay,
provided you're licensed.
okay. I see what you're saying. All right, thank you. This is why we had to go step
Right,
by step.
okay. Well, I just wanted to get through the boilerplate,
Yeah,
you know,
I know.
anyway.
All right, Article 4, general provisions. Conflicting laws, regulations, and restrictions. The provisions of this ordinance shall be held to be the minimum requirements for promoting the public health, safety, and general welfare. Whenever the requirements of this ordinance conflict with other lawfully adopted rules, regulations, or restrictions, or with existing easements, covenants, or other agreements between parties, the requirements imposing the higher standards shall govern. Compliance with the terms of this ordinance in no way removes responsibility for obtaining any and all other permits and approvals required by local, state, or federal law. All right, that's more what I was looking for in what you had said earlier, the applicability, and
Right.
it got me confused for a second. Fully agree with that statement. 4.02, lake, river, and stream protection. Activities which are detrimental to the natural quality of water courses in Clearwater Township are expressly prohibited. Such activities include, but are not limited to, pollution of water by the introduction of chemical or organic pollutants and/or erosion of lake, river, or stream banks. Absolutely.
So that applies to the property owner that would impose on the river,
Right,
not the river protection part that you want to, okay, bring into.
basically, there is a built-in setback, okay? But erosion control, especially on the rivers and streams, basically the responsibility of the owner to ensure that the property isn't, getting damaged or the stream banks, whatever. Basically, it just comes with, common sense maintenance. You wanna protect your shorelines as much as we do.
There is a statement in the Charlevoix one, and I just want to read this so you can consider this. The community has different expectations for noise, occupant loads, and transient activity in its residential neighborhoods than it does in commercial, and even mixed-use zones where hotels are currently permitted. The renting of a home on a short-term basis is substantially more like a business than traditional residential use. That kind of speaks to what you've been saying, only I just, the terminology is clearer and easier for me to understand, so.
So. You would like to modify or include such language somewhere in. Basically, that would be part of the R1 discussion.
Yeah. So
Okay.
let me get,
So make a note when we get there.
okay. Where are we? Occupancy. 4.03. No building shall be occupied until a short-term rental license has been issued by the Clearwater Township Zoning Department.
Pretty much cut and dry. So here's a clarification on that. If you don't apply for a license, now, we have no idea number. Okay, but to accommodate everyone that is using a short-term rental, now we will take as many applications as we can, as we receive. Okay, the licenses will be issued accordingly. All right. The owner that does not wish to apply for a short-term rental license owner, I reiterate, falls back to ordinance 22, homeowner occupied business. Which means if you don't have a license, you're not living on that property and you rent it out, you're in violations of the zoning ordinance, not this one. So you either have a license or you live on the property. That's where that came from. All right, we continue.
I know we're not supposed to comment, but so the way that's worded though is no building shall be occupied, which means I can't occupy it, I own it. I'm just
Yeah.
saying the way it's worded, you're saying you can't occupy the building, even if I'm gonna start using it personally.
Okay, that should be modified to include
Yeah.
no rental unit or dwelling, no, rental dwelling unit, how's that?
What, no? Because you're telling people they can't live in their homes.
No, I understand that, that was something I didn't really look at.
Maybe, just in
No.
the title under occupancy instead of just occupancy, short-term rental occupancy. I mean, I know it's a short-term rental
Right,
ordinance,
Okay,
but
so,
just to,
so if we put STR occupancy
is that,
and no rental unit building shall be occupied. Good catch, Ryan.
But then I can't have my family stay there.
What's that?
You word it that way, I can't
Yeah.
have my family stay there. You should say it can't be rented.
Instead of occupied,
Instead
instead
of
Occupied, you should
occupied.
say
Can be rented.
Because if I
Yeah.
have a family member stay there, I can't.
Okay,
Okay, yeah.
yes, you're right. No building shall be rented until a short-term rental license has been issued.
Yes.
right,
On a short-term basis rented, because we rent our houses on a long-term. People live there currently,
right,
so you should
okay.
narrow this down to short-term rentals, I think, because otherwise.
Here's the problem.
Would be-
We're trying to make everybody happy here, which is virtually impossible. Okay, but,
If your title says short-term rental occupancy, and it specifically says in that no building shall be rented until a short-term rental license has been issued, that
here,
clarifies that it's just short-term rental.
the licenses will be issued by unit. if you have a property, say on Crystal Beach or Arwood Trail, that has a primary house and a garage modified for living quarters or a guest house, or all three, you need a license for each one of those.
Unless you live there.
Yeah, what you.
If you're gonna rent them out, you need a license to rent each building out.
Even if it's.
Not per property?
If it's on your property,
No, this is, no, if you're gonna rent a building out, each dwelling unit must have a license. Okay,
so
That's-
before that, you said if you're a resident of that property, you don't need a license. That's what you said before, I'm just confused, I'm sorry.
okay, repeat that.
Before you said if you live on the property and you rent it out, you do not need a license because it's covered under. the
Right.
short, under the-
Because it's a home occupied business, if
Yeah.
you're living on the property, you can rent, but this is short-term rental units only. Okay, if you're gonna rent for a minimum, when we get there, of 7 days and 30 days or less, okay, this ordinance applies to that particular building. Regardless of how many.
Okay.
So if you own 6 rental units, you need 6 licenses,
Okay.
one for each building.
So you're saying if it's short-term rental, you need a license even though you live on the property?
No, if you're living on the property, okay, you are a home occupied business, you do not need a license. Okay, you are covered under the zoning order.
This is just if you don't live.
Right,
So that includes like if a person has an apartment, a room on their house, they can go ahead
right,
without a license. Okay.
right. You only need an STR. Okay, if you're not living on that property and you rent it out. Okay,
Maybe that needs to be clarified in our beginning language.
okay, well. All right, applicability, we can go back there.
And was living on that property, mean they're a resident, or they just stopped in for a few days of the summer?
No, you have to be on the property, while the property is being rented.
I see.
Okay.
I see.
It's not when I'll stop in and check twice a week.
Yeah.
How we gonna,
Yeah.
we can't verify that at all. If we're gonna enforce this, we need some, I should be able to, as supervisor, zoning administrator, or the deputy. I get a noise complaint from a neighbor, should be able to walk up on the door. If you don't have a short-term rental license, knock on that door and speak to the owner who should be on that property.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you need a license. Okay, so,
So in your applicability, you need to add a statement that says this only applies to properties that are not occupied by the homeowner.
they would be non-owner occupied.
What if you live next door? See property?
How's that determined by homestead? That if you own additional properties that are.
No,
Homestead that defines
Right,
the ownership?
you're already paying higher taxes for, basically a non-homestead. In other words, your primary residence, okay, you'd be living there anyway, otherwise it wouldn't be your homestead exemption.
Well,
Correct?
Not necessarily, you have additional properties that are tied into your homestead, the original home,
Okay,
okay? So if you're paying, if you guys are looking at it as a homestead, where you have all the additional properties that are tied in there, I would consider that one big ownership.
right.
One big piece of property, even though,
Are the tax ID numbers combined?
no, they're different.
You would, if you live next door, you'd be right there to monitor all the time.
Because you couldn't have, obviously, you couldn't have a piece of property separating.
Right.
Property,
So
and then each one of the
you
properties.
own a lot, you own the lot next door, which
Right.
has a house on it. Okay,
Mhm.
you're saying you're physically adjacent to the rental unit.
For 44 years.
So,
We rent
Right, and then you have this summer, winter residents. So
snowbirds.
if they
Okay,
rent
before-
while they're not here, that's still their residence.
Well, no, I understand that, but, are they, how many homeowners are renting their if you're renting your property over the winter, I would assume
Well, that would be.
you're signing a lease with somebody to occupy that building
More than
Unless it's
30
month to
days.
for
month,
more than 30 days.
unless it's, if you go month to month.
Well, if you go month to month, it's still,
There's a lot of questions, a
okay,
lot of.
no, I understand. Yes, sir.
If you own the property next door.
We can make a provision for that. If you are living at the property adjacent to your short-term rental.
I was told years ago that if I put that piece of property, in other words, annexed it to my house next door, I
Right.
couldn't undo it. Once it's done, you can't go
Oh, I
back. Is that
understand.
still true? And the
So,
only other way to get around an ordinance like that would be that we would have to get a divorce. And she owns one and I own the other. I'm serious.
yes, okay,
That's the only other way you can do
We
it.
are the monitor right there, you know.
right. So.
She doesn't like that idea, but I'm.
Oh, okay, we're trying to melt this down into something everybody understands. So if your primary residence is adjacent to,
Does it have to be
Yo.
adjacent to, can it be across the street, can it be 3 doors down?
In the neighborhood.
and be across the street.
Is there a
If it's
limit
tied-
to,
if
how about
it's tied in.
300 feet, or, you know, something like
In the
that?
neighborhood.
In the neighborhood, just straight up in the neighborhood? No, the neighborhood.
no, let's straighten this out, so.
I think if you use the language adjacent, that covers it, what it also covers is in the zoning, because you can, continuous and adjacent properties. That's something that's used in the legal language to, if you want a homestead property that you live next to, or you have property and you own that next to you, you can homestead it if it's continuous or adjacent. And I think that would be a really good way to word this, because it.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
Out your window.
Yeah.
You can't buy it.
I think it might have to include.
all right, but next to
some living
Yes.
in the
adjacent
area.
or close proximity,
In close proximity,
so you would have to define close proximity. So that would have to be a definition added to.
Could look in the other ordinance and see what it lists as requirements for a bed and breakfast, what that actually states, because that's what you're calling it.
We don't do that.
Okay. So we have additional language to accommodate that group of people. Okay, and that would go under applicability,
let's see if there's,
section 102.
I'm looking at the shower, I want to see if they say anything about that.
So you're defining who this ordinance affects is what we're doing with the applicability section.
I don't think they addressed that at all.
Okay. So that information, we can move on.
So that's definitely something that we need to look at.
Would it
Alright.
be possible to read the changes up one, so I can understand what was put into the.
As far as the amended
Yeah,
version of
what is
this,
just amended there for Jason?
We don't have the actual language for that.
Oh, okay.
Right, so,
That'll be something we'll have to ask the attorney
Okay.
to give us proper language for. We'll just tell him the scenarios that we need to address and see if he can give us proper language.
Great, thank you.
Now, you already have a definition of a bed and breakfast in your other ordinance, which gives you the carte blanche
Well-
rent. Okay, you should look in there and see what the definition of it is, because that's what you're claiming is an allowable thing for these.
well,
That's.
what you're saying is an adjacent owner becomes a bed and breakfast.
No,
That's what I'm saying. What does your definition of bed and breakfast say? Does it say you can have an adjacent house, or does it say it has to be like a lived-in type thing?
that's what I assumed.
Good question.
Yeah.
You should already have an existing definition of what a bed
Right.
and breakfast is.
Well, it's in our definitions here, but it doesn't address proximity of the owner, which is what we're dealing with here.
It's.
I was thinking that would just,
We're looking for control. Okay, we get a complaint, we call the owner and say, hey, your clientele at this address, okay, has a complaint from a neighbor. Please address the situation. Okay,
Is that, which ordinance is that, the bed and breakfast, do you know?
It would be like in each individual zoning.
actually, you're at
do we have them?
Article 5 is definitions. Go to the next page.
I'm looking for the bed and breakfast. That's what I was looking for.
It's in here.
Oh, it is in here?
Yes.
Why is it in here?
Article 5, bottom of this, the page we're on, bed and breakfast. An owner occupied single-family residence in which sleeping accommodations are offered to the public on a daily,
Did that come from our ordinance?
that came from the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
There's provisions of the-
Yeah.
Okay, on a daily or weekly basis for compensation. Well, basically, we're gonna have to change, when we get there.
We'll go back to. We are on 4.04, litter control, so we definitely need to look at that occupancy. Not the occupancy, but that question. 4.04, litter control. Property owner / renter shall be responsible for maintaining area free of litter. That does not make sense. Food residue and broken glass, and said area shall be maintained in a safe and sanitary condition.
That should be whole township, not just short-term rentals.
Yeah, I think is that
Well, basically,
the blight ordinance? Is that?
well, the blight ordinance covers this too. Okay,
And you already say that they need to follow the other ordinances, right?
okay, so what you're saying, you wanna strike that
I think that should be,
because trash is covered later on
Yeah.
under violations.
yeah,
Okay, so cross that out. License requirements becomes 4.04 then.
all right, license requirements, 4.04, the zoning administrator shall issue a short term, that would be term, not turn. Rental license to property owners whose application meets the requirements of this ordinance and all other applicable local, county, and state requirements. Is
Okay,
is
so
that what, I mean, we're putting this all on the zoning administrator.
we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
That's right.
Yes, we're creating a monster.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, let's continue.
They'll have to examine, the zoning administrator, according to this, we have to examine each one.
No, what we're looking at is hiring.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
Additional
according to
personnel.
this, someone wants to apply for a license, the zoning administrator would go to that place, right? The property owners, which it has to meet the requirements, are you just gonna trust the person, or are you just gonna have?
No, what you're gonna do is take that application
Yeah.
and compare it to the
Okay.
physical facts.
Okay,
Okay, prior to issuing the zoning ordinance, zoning administrator will have to do.
the
A
person
site
will have to
inspection.
be familiar with it.
Okay, definitions, like I said, that we pulled, most of these off the zoning ordinance. There are a couple of changes, so continue.
Okay. Article 5, definitions, accessory building. A supplemental building or structure on the same lot or part of the main building occupied by or devoted exclusively to accessory use.
That means a converted garage or a guest house.
That would be.
Or a llama shed.
Nice to-
Okay, when I was on the planning commission, okay, there was, basically a request to put a second story on a garage, which is an accessory building, to install a mother-in-law apartment with full kitchen, bath, and living facilities. Okay, for the purposes of, at the time, a short-term rental. So we modified the zoning ordinance to accommodate accessory buildings, which would include a guest house or a converted garage.
It would be nice to have that clarified, like it was just clarified to someone.
It says accessory use, you could just put short-term rental use. But, or to include. But to me,
It is just the
it's an
definition
accessory
of-
use of an outbuilding. Which is covered by the term dwelling unit.
Well, it's,
Okay, so the definitions. Basically, if they're totally unclear, I would change these, but most of them are generic and are repeated
yeah,
in several of our ordinances anyway.
I know you just defined that for us. Where is that term used in this?
Yes, right there.
Accessory building is basically
I
not,
mean, in the ordinance, what is? Where does it say accessory building?
it doesn't,
It's right below that one.
I mean, we're defining it. If we're defining it, then it should be in the ordinance somewhere. If it's not in the ordinance anywhere, then why are we defining
It's
it?
saying right below that, are you, that's what you're talking about, accessory use right below that?
No,
We just added that to our room not too long ago. It was.
okay, so, all
so it's
right.
already in
So
our,
she raised a good point, then.
Just recently added.
A use customarily incidental and subordinate to the principal use or building, converted garage. On the same lot as the principal use or building.
Oh.
So basically. It defines other use,
Basically addition.
It seems like this ordinance would apply to that because the owner's living on that.
not necessarily. The primary houses on Crystal Beach Road, many of them are rented out to include the garage, which has a second floor or is converted garage or a guest house. Okay, so in which case basically, if you're gonna rent out your garage or your guest house, you need a license for that building. Okay, if you're gonna use it for short-term rentals,
I'm still looking for that
an
terminology.
accessory use, we can define as short-term rental.
Unless you're living on the property.
Unless you're living on the property and it's your owner occupied business.
Christine, do you have an electronic copy of this? Cause you could search it if you did, if you had it on your.
The red letter, I printed up, I do believe I sent it Thursday.
I just went through all of
Yeah, I
them.
know. Thursday's email. So there should be a copy
Yeah,
available.
So, I'm not seeing accessory building anywhere in this ordinance, so that's why I'm like, why are we defining it if it's not written
Well,
here?
yeah. We can go back to,
It should be an amendment on the website, Christine. Because we just added it not too long ago.
yeah, well, she's up on Zoom. right
Well,
now.
I mean, we're defining what's applicable for the short-term rental ordinance, so,
Yeah, but
You know.
R1 just recently received, an amendment that allowed for, accessory buildings.
Okay.
It was not.
What's the definition of it? What's the definition of that?
Like an accessory building,
Yeah,
any building,
that's what somebody put the lawnmower in.
A garage.
a shed.
Right, okay,
Or even.
You need a permit actually to put the
Exactly.
shed up.
exactly.
Okay,
So change of
so
life.
that's an accessory building. Now, are you gonna rent that out? Does it have living quarters, full kitchen and full
You
bathroom?
know, where are you gonna put the mother-in-law? Is that part of the garage or the accessory?
Accessory building is a generic term that covers anything other than the primary residence.
Okay, so that's why I wanna make.
Okay.
Sure that- Fine.
A supplemental building or structure.
well,
But Christine's point is, if that term isn't used in this STR ordinance, it doesn't need to be defined.
Okay,
yeah,
Why
and
is
I'm
it-
not
What
seeing
we-
it anywhere in the ordinance.
what we need to do is make sure that we include an outbuilding, an accessory building in the
Square
ordinance.
footage-ish.
In the applicability or in.
Right. So we need to define,
in
we
the
defined accessory
scope, where,
building.
where does that go?
Okay. Let's go back to 404, litter control. Accessory
there-
building defined. Basically garage,
Well, that's gonna have to be part of your ordinance, that
right,
you don't have anything in there talking about using accessory buildings.
so we put it in 404.
So confused.
In other words, this
Under general
This
provisions.
ordinance in, for short-term rental purposes, this ordinance includes accessory buildings such as garages and structures,
Excuse me, 404 says litter control,
which we just struck.
yeah,
Okay, so it's open. right now.
to put something in.
Right,
Yeah. Well, see, that's why we're going through it piece by piece.
Okay.
Because we didn't
So
have
if-
anything here for that.
if we included accessory buildings
You need
as
to-
part of 404, we're in applicability, so it applies to modified garages.
We don't
guest
have any
houses.
language for that, we need to write the
Now,
language. for that.
if somebody's puts an addition on their home and rents the addition out, but they're living there, now they're a home occupied business.
Yeah. so it doesn't
Okay,
apply.
and you don't need a license for that.
If they're living in the house and renting their detached garage with an apartment above it,
Right, they need,
that's an accessory building, but
they
they
need a
live there.
license for that garage.
Why? Because they live on the property.
Proximity, that goes to our proximity argument again,
Yeah.
Make a hallway.
Okay. but it's a homeowner occupied business, if they're living there, yes.
Yeah,
Okay, which means it would be on the tax rolls, homesteaded as their primary residence,
Mhm.
which can be checked.
so you're saying this ordinance only applies or does not apply to homestead,
No. If,
owner occupied homestead.
yes. Okay, if the homestead complies with zoning ordinance 22.
Once in a day.
Okay,
You guys gotta be.
It doesn't make, yeah.
I know.
This is.
okay, now, we're gonna get
It
through.
can't be
I
simple.
appreciate for what you.
We're gonna get through this. I'm so sick of this. Okay, but it is necessary. Okay, short-term rentals have artificially inflated land values here. Ridiculously, okay? Some of the clientele are,
Let's keep going.
okay, I'm just saying,
I know.
we're gonna do this.
Okay, so we've determined that accessory building, accessory use, and auxiliary living space all need to be
They need to be defined,
clarified.
better defined, under
Included in the ordinance.
under
itself.
404 because we just cleared that space.
All right,
So
so
accessory buildings will be addressed at 404. Licensing requirements becomes again 405.
then is auxiliary living space
Right.
considered in that as well, at 404?
Right,
Okay. So auxiliary living space, under definitions, a building containing facilities for sleeping, eating, cooking, and disposal of waste that is used primarily for housing family members or guests during vacation periods and is not intended or used for extended occupation throughout much of the year. That is an auxiliary living space. The rental of auxiliary living space for more than 30 days in a calendar year is not considered applicable under this ordinance, but neither would it under short-term rental because you are
Living there.
living there.
That's so confusing.
you're not living there.
You're living there.
This basically addresses RVs and campers.
It does.
It doesn't say that, though.
It doesn't say
well.
anything about that.
Yeah, well, but that's why it's there, an auxiliary living space. In other words, you tow.
That's, you have a second living room, a second kitchen, and a giant bathroom. And you don't utilize that space in your family daily life. That's an auxiliary space
Just
in the home that you live in.
There is a definition in your ordinance for auxiliary living space, and this is not it.
Okay,
Okay, so that needs to be addressed, but it was included basically to address RVs and campers.
so
Which
you
is,
need
That
to
needs to be
change that if it's
specified.
RV and campers.
What's that?
It needs to change if it's for RVs and campers.
Right, I understand that, so. We need to look at auxiliary living space.
I think auxiliary living space in your ordinance is an actual building. Yes.
Right.
And if you want to do RVs and campers, which does make sense, you might have to have a separate definition for those.
Right, well, so this basically,
Wheels off and all kinds of.
Right,
Right.
maybe the title of the definition needs to be changed.
Maybe, yes.
Okay, and it's an auxiliary.
Well, you say straight out, a building.
That would include a guest house, modified garage, RVs and campers.
That's an accessory.
Drop the A and put the buildings, RVs and campers.
This is talking about living space in
Right.
your house.
No,
That's what this says, auxiliary living space. Accessory building is.
where does
above
it say
that.
in your house?
Oh my goodness.
Says
In the
during
definition.
vacation periods is not intended for use during extended occupation.
Which is defined in the ordinance as less than 120 days. There is a pretty solid definition that
Right.
eventually be able to refer to. I
Okay,
don't
so,
think it gives any reference to a camper or.
so we have to. 120 days for these ones.
So I think RVs and campers would be addressed under accessory building. RV or camper.
No, that's a building or a structure. What we're talking about
Well, this
is a
is
living
building
space,
containing.
is a living space that's pretty much,
An RV or camper is not a building,
I know, so cross that out and put RV and camper in there.
but you don't want building at all.
No,
All right.
so basically what we're saying is an RV and a camper or a mobile trend that has the facilities for sleeping, eating and cooking, disposal of waste is considered an auxiliary living space for short-term rental purposes. Okay, so if you're gonna rent out an RV and you're gonna park a bunch of RVs on your property,
Mhm.
okay, the minute you go over the 4, now you're a campground. Now we go to the DNR. And we call the state and say, this is an illegal campground. You have to be licensed and registered by the state. So, but we do have a situation on Ironwood Trail where we have 3, 4 RVs parked there during the entire summer. Okay, that I know are being rented out, but I've been there twice. These are for family use. While they're renting out the house in the corner, these are in the backyard. Okay, so we're trying to address that situation.
So they're living there, but they.
So if
live
they wanna
somewhere.
park an RV in their backyard, rent out the house, they're not living there. They need a license for the house and every RV on that property.
What if they move into the
Yeah,
RV
they're probably staying
while they
in
rent the
RV.
house?
If they move in and they're owner occupied, now they're a commercial business. Okay, and they're a commercial business in R1, which we need to address under zoning.
They're living there.
I think zoning doesn't allow campers in R1, which was, I mean, I think that's what you're gonna have.
You're allowed one, I believe, under the zoning ordinance. You can have one RV in.
It says something about only while the primary residence is under construction, I believe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Place is not.
Right.
Yeah.
2 years.
So you might as well start moving forward, though, you might as well start figuring boats that are on the river, that are big enough to house people for the weekend, because that's the next thing that's coming.
I know, pontoons. And you know, people that come up here on vacation either rent a pontoon or bring their own boat. They have no dock space, no mooring space. So they have to put them somewhere, which creates a parking problem.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I'm gonna get off track, I know y'all are just working hard at this, but just one question. So I've got additional rental space on my docks. So do I have to get a permit for that? Do you know? Is there anything that I can rent out space on my dock for a pontoon boat?
That would be just a personal agreement between you and the boat.
There's no, all of a sudden you fall into, how many boats can you put on your dock before you turn?
Before you become a marina, then, that's when we call it.
I don't want to deter from what we're
That's when
talking.
we call it DNR again.
Yeah.
Because-
It's getting nuts.
And that already has happened
Yes,
already. If you have more like 3 docks, I know a case, yeah, it's like, whoa, they get.
So I apologize, I don't want to take.
right, like,
I might be wrong, but I think zoning only goes as far as the high water mark.
yeah,
Mhm.
township has no authority under. Once we hit the high water mark, we're done, other than the road ends, which extend 100 feet past the high water mark.
All right, so did we cover bed and breakfast? We touched on that.
We touched on it,
But the definition, an owner occupied single family residence in which sleeping accommodations are offered to the public on a daily or weekly basis for compensation. This ordinance does not apply to owner occupied commercial businesses. Period.
right,
You said before you wanted to extend that so that if you live right next to the property is included, if I understood that correctly, or?
well,
Yes. We're gonna add the provision in that definition
for
for owners who
adjacent
close proximity.
proximity owners.
Can see the property.
which we have to define. So that proximity owner, that needs a definition also.
Definitely not voting on this today, just so you know.
Oh, no. What we're trying to do is get it into some way, shape or form so we can reprint this thing,
Yeah.
send it to the lawyer. We can publish the draft
We just, you
for
know,
those.
creating more
I mean,
questions.
obviously, there is a high degree of interest in this. So,
All right, continuing in the Bs, bedroom dash residential.
we're defining a bedroom.
Yes,
A futon in a hallway does not constitute a sleeping quarter
why are we defining a bedroom?
because,
Number of bedrooms, man.
because they have to
And the
meet
number of
minimum
people who live.
residential building requirements according to the state, and that's what's printed.
Okay, so that's under
So,
building requirements, so we don't. That's not under our law, that's under building.
we're defining, a bedroom so that.
And I go back again to where is that?
So
in the building?
what we're getting at is number of bedrooms in capacity
Mhm.
down the road. Okay, so in order to qualify a bedroom, we need a definition for the bedroom.
Okay,
In other words, if it doesn't meet this definition, it's not a bedroom, therefore you can't count it as a guest accommodation.
I think there's a state, definition of a bedroom, it's a minimum of 70 feet with a window and a door.
That's what
That's
this
it.
is.
Right, you have to have two forms of egress.
Can you just read that? That's kind of what Jim.
a
said.
separate room with a door, does it have to have a closet? Why does it have to have a closet?
Not by, according to what the state says.
Yeah.
And besides, there's a lot of old cottages that had armoires that don't have.
Oh, yeah.
So you're gonna make everybody.
Well, that would be considered a closet, I guess, but we can strike.
Strike closet.
It has to
Okay,
have
a
window.
separate room with a door and window that is used or intended to be used specifically for sleeping purposes. A bedroom must be a habitable space, not less than 70 square feet, not less than 7 feet in one dimension, not located in an attic or basement. Why? Oh, without egress. So that if it's in the attic, it has to have egress. If it's in the basement, well, any room has to have egress to be considered a bedroom. Meeting standards and applicable building, residential and fire codes, and not a room by design intended to serve another purpose such as a kitchen, dining area. I don't agree with that because there are a lot of Airbnbs that have fold-out couches in the living room. I don't think you need to say you can't have a bedroom in the living room
Is it,
or dining room.
is it 70 square feet? As long as it's 70 square.
Well,
feet.
yeah, as long as, I mean,
It's
so
over
I
that.
think you can,
This is going less than.
I think you can scratch that, not a room by design intended to serve another purpose. Because,
And end it there.
yeah, end it with the fire codes.
But the septic systems are based on bedrooms, so if you're gonna call something a bedroom, it should be a bedroom.
Well, right, and the living room doesn't have a door anyway, so it still wouldn't meet this definition, which is correct if you're counting bedroom. There's something later in here where it says that the number of bedrooms plus 2 additional occupants, which would speak to someone
To that.
sleeping on a height of bed.
Okay,
There's something else in here.
Right. Basically,
okay, so this is just the definition of what a bedroom is, and
right,
is the rest of that definition included in building codes?
I don't know, full building code.
I would have to go back to 301.4 of the Michigan Residential Building Code and look it up.
All right, so,
But basically, we could strike the afterthought.
because you really are only
You
defining,
see, but we can't, you know. The thing is counting for capacity purposes, the living room is a bedroom. Gets into, okay, it's a sleeping area, right? They can crash on the couch. All right, 2 additional people covers that, we're looking at
Yeah.
trying to put a cap on. We don't want somebody advertising that the maximum capacity of a house on Crystal Beach Road is 34 people.
Right, yeah, I totally get that.
I have one that does.
It's there.
In fact, when I was looking at the Charlevoix one, I think they limit 7 or 10 people.
Okay, well, we'll get,
So, yeah,
get that.
yeah. All right,
So now what do we do about, so not a room by design intended to serve another purpose, just stop it right
well,
there.
let's check building codes on that and see if there's any, if that should be there, but.
Or health.
So if we say, and not a room by
Health
design intended to serve another purpose, that wipes out the kitchen, dining area, hallway, den, living room.
And if it's already regulated by another governing body, it doesn't have to be in our ordinance.
That's true.
All right, building is defined as a structure erected on site or a mobile home or mobile structure, including, you already have the RVs right here. Including recreational vehicles and trailer campers designed primarily for the shelter, support, or occupation of persons. What? Oh, so your building means all of that, and according to your definition.
Right,
So would that include a tent?
no,
Let's
you
go.
have cooking and sanitary facilities in a tent.
How about campers do either?
Right?
A lot of campers don't. But if you're gonna be renting out a pop-up camper that doesn't have, you're basically looking at a campsite, not a residential
Yeah,
district,
even the bathrooms.
okay? And
So if you go
These-
back to-
regulations, basically, are designed to restrict activities mostly in the R1 section of Clearwater. When we get to, outside the R1 land use districts, zoning ordinance 22 basically addresses, all that, including campground.
You know, in your applicability in 1.02, it says this ordinance applies to any dwelling unit. Don't you think that we should change building to dwelling unit?
Yes.
Because you're defining a building as a camper or recreational vehicle.
Okay, well, I stuck that in there.
That is addressed at the bottom of the page. You have to-
Oh, okay, see, yep.
But that would include, a mobile home is, basically a building.
Mobile structure. I don't know that you would include recreational vehicle in that, though. Why would you have a recreational vehicle as a building? Are you talking, I mean, tell me what your thought is on recreational vehicle. I'm thinking ATVs.
Well, no, an RV is basically a drivable mobile
Okay,
home.
so you say,
Now,
you
now,
say
if you're
mobile.
looking at, four-wheeler, that's an old RV.
Okay,
Now, we could include this, definition under dwelling unit.
yeah,
So once we get down there, we can move the building. Definition. Down to dwelling unit.
yeah, I guess those should all be together, but I mean,
Or dwelling itself. See, a dwelling implies a physical home. A dwelling unit, as defined by this ordinance, you include mobile homes, RVs.
So recreational. When you say recreational vehicle, you mean,
So if we scratch building and move the definition, we combine it with dwelling unit.
you say mobile home. Mobile structure. Recreational vehicles. Trailer campers. Okay. That's confusing to me. Campground.
So these would be designed primarily for the shelter support or occupation of persons not include an off-road vehicle.
Off-road vehicle, unless somebody wants to sleep in one, well, you never know.
Campground. Continue.
Campground, a facility for camping using tents, there's your tents, or recreational vehicles for protection from the elements. State licensed campgrounds are exempt from this ordinance.
Now,
So where, and you said there's, your definition of a campground is different than the state's?
basically, the state regulations require a campground being defined as 5 or more units.
So you would be,
So
this is.
if you're 4 or less, you fall under our jurisdiction. If you're 5 or more, you fall under the state regulations. Because that primarily goes to sanitation and safety, shower facilities, water, et cetera. Okay,
Should that be defined in this?
now, we don't. I wanted to put this in here simply because there are a couple of campgrounds. There's one in particular on Harwood Trail. I believe it's kind of a kitty corner from the boat launch there. That's basically family owned and hasn't been operated for quite some time, but I did get some complaints.
You mean where the trailer, the camper trailers are?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did get a few complaints about that, concerning, I don't know, illegal campground. But I didn't go at that point, check it out. I referred it to zoning. But anything over 4, you have to be licensed by the state. So that kind of tones that into the situation
So
down.
anything over 4, you have to be licensed.
Right. Because there are sanitation requirements for well and said.
On Valley Road, there's one,
Oh, that's a good question.
there could be 4. I think family members have a lot and they just come and leave their campers there and they get together as a family and that's all they do is.
I don't know if he's renting those out or not. But I've been, every time I can drive by there, in the summertime, I count them. Okay, there are no more than 4. So he falls within the zoning ordinance.
So if we had every property owner along there that has a vacant lot, and they start stacking their 4 campers up there, we got a damn mobile park there, you know?
Right.
So why is it, why?
If they're renting for less than 30 days.
Why was it defined as anything over 3? Why not just 1?
Well,
The owner has 1 camper.
the zoning ordinance addresses 1 RV. There has to have a valid plate on it, and it has to be in operational condition, so it can be moved. Okay, so you look at it from that perspective. If they're renting these things out for 30 days or less, okay, they fall under this ordinance. Okay, and if they're renting them out without a license, okay, then we write them out every day.
If they're just staying there as family, it's no big deal then.
Right,
That's good.
but if they're
If they're
If they're
4 or
if-
less, they can.
If
get
they're
it.
using it for family purposes, or are they charging them rent?
Well, it looks, I don't know, but it looks to me like I might have one, my brother and all these, and you just got this place. And you leave your camper there and you come up and stay, you might all be there at the same time, you not be there all the same time.
Are you renting it out?
That's right, no rent, just be able to keep
Okay,
there.
no, that's
So
fine.
it's not considered a campground,
No,
right? Okay, no, if it's not.
if you're not using it for commercial purposes, that's the other thing. So if they're operating as a campground out on Harwood Trail and they're not living there,
I think
they're in
that
violation of ordinance 22.
probably needs to be looked at as more of a, that's gotta be looked,
That's a separate issue. Campgrounds are a separate issue. What I'm trying to do is isolate under this ordinance, okay, RVs and fifth wheelers, okay, from being parked on somebody's property and rented out all summer.
So you're saying you don't want them to do that, or you're saying that they need to? register
If they're
that?
gonna do that, they need a license,
Okay, so, yeah.
okay?
However, if they live in that home and they rent out their RV, they're right there.
Then,
And it doesn't
if
apply.
they live in the home, okay, there's no
Or in
home.
close
This
proximity.
Arwood Trail Campground has no primary residence on it. It's just a bunch of pop-up trailers,
Mhm.
And those are the three you're talking about.
right?
And it's defined as a campground,
Yes,
it's residential. Right?
yes,
Okay, so if you define it as a one trailer, one movable trailer instead of three. Okay, I've got 3 condos down in Florida. I'm gonna trade those condos down there for usage on my 3 trailers that are on that corner right there. Is there any money exchanged? No. But see, we've gotta look at it, we've gotta deal with it. And nobody else, and they're not complying by the rules that were stated probably a long time ago, you know? Everything's being pushed in this area, and that's what's aggravating.
There's still a monetary value, even if though no money was exchanged.
Right,
There's still a monetary value that could be assigned to them.
I'm confused, are we condoning that somebody that is not homesteaded on a property should have the right to rent out a camper on a residential one district lot?
when we get to R1, we can address some of the stuff.
Because I can't
Short-term
imagine why-
rentals
But the
apply to all
campground
kinds
issue
of
is,
different dwellings.
the campground issue is a separate item. If you're not living there and you're renting out these campers, you're in violation of zoning ordinance 22. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, restricting the number of RVs or pop-up or towable camper trailers.
But you can't police, you can't investigate, you can't police the fact that you're renting them out. I mean, that's impossible, you know?
So how do you advertise your rentals?
How do you advertise it?
Yeah, how do you get your clientele?
I've got 20 friends that I exchange property on. They're not my rentals, so I want to make it clear, they're not mine. But, you know, so I trade off other property. I got 3 trailers up on Arwood Trail that you're right across the street from the land. So you guys go out there, use that for a month, and I'll use a condo down here in Florida.
Okay,
There's nothing exchanged monetary.
so you're right, so
So it's happening. The only way that you're gonna be able to restrict any of that is to limit it down to what the rules are gonna be stated. It's one camper, it's there for, it's not a permanent deal. Next thing you know, you got everybody with their campers out by the water.
if we do that,
Mhm.
we want to address it in R1. If you're living in rec or agricultural or forest, land use, okay? And you want a license, up to 4
That's
mobile
residential though. That's what-
vehicles, okay? Now you're into a homeowner occupied business, but you have to be living on that property,
I know, so we got it.
okay?
Limit it.
So what you're talking about basically would be, and when we get to R1, special regulations, which are what we're trying to deal with here. Okay, we need to limit the number of RVs or towable campers that qualify as a dwelling unit.
But should any be rentable? I mean, don't get me wrong, I see part of this as an infringement of my rights as a
I
property.
understand.
But I can't, I am so highly restrictive, I tell people like, with threats of near death, you do not have a camper that you use when you come here. That is, it is, that it's against.
We need to put this in writing, okay, so that everybody's playing by the same rules, okay? You, as a responsible owner and renter are not, you are probably the general rule. But but there are exceptions. Okay? We have outside interests that are invading Clearwater Township, that are here to see that the check clears the bank and for no other reason.
I think we're getting a little off topic here.
So what we're trying to do is come up with something that restricts those types of, the outliers.
We want to.
Okay, we want our community back is what we're doing.
Good, yeah.
All right, so let's continue before.
I did get a question regarding, homeowners who live in close proximity. They said, what if, they are the homeowner, but they don't live there, but they have family that watches,
I believe
and their family
the
lives right
definition,
there.
the definition of a homeowner occupied business is the owner or immediate family.
Oh, okay. Owner or immediate family.
And, you know, basically it's,
So
I
that
don't know
needs
if
to
it's an
be
aunt, uncle,
Added
cousin,
in the,
that's related by marriage, but immediate family would mean basically a son, daughter,
okay,
grandson.
so that definition needs to be. Or that needs to be added in the definition.
Do you guys have a time limit? Is there a time limit you guys are here for?
A
Till
time
my
limit.
battery dies on my laptop today. I don't think we're gonna get through this whole thing because we're not even halfway. Because we got stuck on campground there for a second, so that's definitely 4 or less, and that needs more
Yeah,
attention.
4 or less, and that falls under ordinance 22.
Oh, 4 or less, falls under ordinance 22, so does it need to be in,
Right,
well, it does need to be in this because they
Right.
are renting them, okay.
right, so, and, the primary purpose of that definition was for state.
So
license.
would that not, I think that would maybe not be titled campground, but that would be titled something other than campground,
Campers,
Just put camping.
camping or camper use. Okay. Caretaker, a caretaker is an individual or company other than the licensee who is responsible for the oversight and care of the short-term rental. The caretaker shall be available to respond to renter and or neighbor concerns, to take remedial action or respond to any violation of this or other ordinances. Yeah.
that would be a designated agent, property manager.
Well, if it's noise or nuisance, that's gonna fall under our noise or nuisance ordinance, and that is,
Well, we could
Police
strike that,
by-
but that was, it says other ordinances. That would be for the benefit of the owner. So that if a noise ordinance, violation is written,
Mhm.
the ticket goes to the renter. It also goes to the owner. Okay, this is a violation of,
Again, I pulled this from Charlevoix, but it is an actual complaint form that we
Right.
can utilize.
right,
um,
so, and that would be,
Modify it for ours.
that would be, you know, for, noise, you know, the deputy goes over there, tells them to tone it down.
Right,
If they turn the music off or break up to sing along at the bonfire, okay, no problem.
well, I don't think our caretakers are enforcers of our township ordinances.
No,
But sometimes it's nice to be able to call a caretaker, tell them what's up, and they can. give
They can
them the
go
first
over,
warning,
yeah, yeah,
you know, they gotta stop.
and then we,
That's how.
we need a person to do it.
language for that, yeah, first contact.
Somebody sets,
Maybe, I don't know.
somebody sets the kitchen on fire, and the fire department responds, okay? You pick up the phone, or you look up the owner, and he's in Arizona. That's that's not, we need somebody that's within an hour of Clearwater Township that can come and take,
Mhm.
in the owner's absence, handle the situation. That's why the definitions are. That caretaker or property manager or agent would be listed on the application. So,
Fire department has issues with that. okay?
Yeah,
okay,
2 years ago down at Crystal Beach, one place had fire alarm 3 nights in a row. We called the fire alarm people, they said, well, this is the contact was in Wichita Falls, Texas. The homeowner lived in, Greenville, Utah.
okay. This is to provide for basically a contact acting on the owner's behalf that can handle any situation that requires notification of the owner. Period. To act in their stead and have, the authority to, take whatever action is necessary.
Can you say like within the hour?
It's in there.
Okay.
It's there. Okay, so if you want to scratch the noise and nuisance ordinances. From that, I just put that in
yeah,
parentheses.
I wouldn't.
That was basically for the benefit of the owner. The owner's gonna want to get a copy of the ordinance with his license so that he has this available to him regardless. So I'm looking at this from, if I'm the owner of a property and I want to rent it out, what would I expect to see in this?
Well, what I'm thinking of, and just, this is my thought, okay? What I'm thinking of is, how are the neighbors going to know who to contact for every short-term rental?
They're gonna basically,
Do they know who the caretaker is for every short-term rental?
They're gonna
Or
contact
they're
the
gonna
township.
call, yeah, they're gonna call Angie.
they're gonna call the office of the zoning administrator. And the zoning administrator will look at the information and give it to them, or the office.
So,
There's some townships that require that to be posted at the front door, the front
Yeah.
window,
mhm,
the owners, the caretaker. the
Yeah.
homeowners.
that's another thing that I pulled from Charlotte, not even kidding.
Yeah.
It's excellent. It's a good visitor guide that they have to post.
Right, right. That's,
It's a requirement.
that's addressed down there, I think it's just information or something, once we get to, the licensing procedures. Domestic pets. let's
So
move
hold on, the caretaker shall be available to respond to renter and or neighbor concerns. Okay, so they need to be available to us.
Right,
And is that on the application for the permit?
the caretaker,
Yeah,
yeah, that would be part of the information that would be included in the application.
okay. I think that section there, the caretaker shall, doesn't belong there because it is a definition of a caretaker. If that's not the area where you say what the caretaker should do. In this section, you're only reading definitions. So if you want to include that guideline for a caretaker, that should be in
These
your-
definitions were
for general
basically
provisions.
written to apply to this ordinance specifically,
Right, you're defining the terms
right?
that you're
Okay,
using.
so what you're saying is the second sentence of that needs to be moved,
Yeah, it needs to be moved to your,
license.
general provisions or licensing or wherever you wanna put that.
Okay, we'll go till noon and then, basically, depending on where we're at, if there's Set another date to finish it up.
Sorry.
That's all right.
All right, domestic pets, dogs, cats, and other animals customarily housed within a dwelling. A dwelling is a single unit providing complete independent living facilities for occupancy, including permanent provisions for living, sleeping, eating, and cooking. A dwelling unit is a building or portion, not portion, thereof, used for human habitation, which provides complete living facilities, including facilities for living. You might need to reword that a little bit. Living, sleeping, sanitation, cooking, and eating purposes for the purpose of short-term rentals. A dwelling unit shall include recreational vehicles and campers with such facilities. Yeah, that. We're gonna fix that. Living facilities, including facilities for living.
I just scratched the second one.
So if you define that as including vehicles, recreational vehicles, camper and campers, that means somebody can get a license to rent a camper on their property?
If they're gonna rent it out for less
I
than
think
30
you're saying,
days.
but not R1, and that's what Tom's saying.
But
When you get
not
R1.
Right.
Oh, it won't be our.
Right. In other words, I got 10 acres. If I want to park an RV down at the bottom of my hill and rent it out, short-term rental for extra income,
Thank you.
okay?
Yes.
I would apply for a license to do that.
I see.
Okay,
And actually, I did.
I'm lost for a second again. This ordinance is for R1 or for everybody? It's for everybody, okay. And you just separated R1 from everybody regarding campers.
Here, you define R1 restrictions.
Okay,
So R1
so that's under R1 restrictions.
Obviously, you didn't have a chance to read through this.
I did, but you know what, like I said, I'm not,
Okay, I didn't write a table of contents, which I probably should have. Okay, so you could look at it and say, that's addressed in this section.
mhm,
Article
Mhm.
6, Article
that,
5
yeah, that would
deals
have
with
been,
licenses, Article 6 deals with violations, Article 7 deals with enforcement,
I'm writing right at the top of the page.
which is why I reformat, so it's so we can be specific
All right,
which section of this we're addressing.
thank you. Home occupation, an occupation carried on in a family dwelling or accessory building conducted only by members of a family residing on the premises. Carried on.
That's about as cut and dried as you can get.
Okay, that's home occupation. License, a periodical short-term rental license duly issued by Clearwater Township. Mhm. License holder, the term or authorized. Wait, the owner or authorized agent of the property who applies and receives a short-term license, that's your license holder. The owner is a person or entity that holds the legal title to the property. Parking space. 1 unit of area provided for the safe parking of 1 vehicle within the property lines of a property and not over a septic field. Property must have available on-site parking to accommodate all renter vehicles.
I think we need to have a definition of it. That include road trailers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, by definition, a vehicle is not considered a boat trailer
no, it's not.
because it has to be, it has to be able to have forward motion under its own driver.
So we're looking at, basically an RV, a truck, an SUV, vehicle, or car.
Is there a definition of a vehicle in here? I don't see a definition of
Licensed
vehicle.
vehicle?
I would think would include trailers and hauling anything.
Well, I'll tell you,
All right, we need a
all
definition of
right,
vehicle.
no, we don't need a definition of vehicle.
We don't need a definition of vehicle.
What we need is between renter and vehicle, at the end of that, insert motorized,
Hmm?
motor vehicles. And that would include motorcycles.
Hmm.
All renter motor vehicles. Now, it doesn't have a motor, it doesn't get a parking space.
Well, this is only defining your parking space.
Right,
It's not defining what that vehicle is.
property must have available on-site parking, that's what this is dealing with.
Mhm.
When we get down to the regulations and restrictions, which we can define a motor vehicle or a vehicle,
This is where definition goes, that's what I'm saying.
right? But property must have available on-site parking to it. Read this from the owner's perspective.
Mhm.
We don't want to be looking for, okay, the reason I put this here is 1 unit of area per vehicle. Okay, that's for the owner. This is what we're gonna be looking at as the township enforcement officer. Okay, so I want to provide as much information to the owner, which we can readdress down in the regulation on the violation section. But if I'm looking at reading through this as a property owner that's going to apply for a license, I need to know that 1 unit of area provided for the safe parking of one
Of all,
motor
of
vehicle
all renter vehicles, that's what it says.
within the property lines of the property, not over a septic field.
You just wanna
In
say,
other words, they can park on the grass. They can't park over the drain field.
Can it say a renter vehicle? It doesn't have to say all renter vehicle. A renter motor vehicle.
it does say all renter.
All renter vehicles, so the person can rent, they can have it.
Anyway.
As long as there's a parking
We're
spot.
getting into semantics here. What we're trying to do is ensure that the property with the capacity as listed in the license, okay, can accommodate the vehicles for that capacity. So we're not dealing with,
That'll be determined by each.
right, yeah, basically, this is how many parking spaces you have. Okay, you have parking for 6 vehicles. If you assume 2 per vehicle, that's 12 people. But you advertise you're running this out, we can accommodate 20. Okay, does that mean you're gonna have 10 cars? 4 of which are gonna be parked on the street
Can't
overnight?
assume by looking how many cars, how many people are there.
What we're trying to do is come up with some way of capping the capacity in R1. Okay,
Well, we haven't gotten there yet,
Prevent the
so
overflow.
we're still looking at parking
that
spaces.
prevents 15 cars being piled into a 50-foot lot.
They have to have available on-site parking, that's what you're looking
Right,
at.
right, so, but this definition tells the owner that the property must have available on-site parking
Mhm.
and defines a parking space.
It defines a parking space.
Okay, so if we insert motor in front of vehicle, we've got it covered.
Okay.
All right, can we continue?
Yeah, let's define what a person is.
Boy, here we go.
Oh, that's not what I thought.
No. This is an entity, okay? You want to change it to entity,
No,
person or entity, okay? This is LLCs, partnership, corporation, sole proprietorship. We are trying to define those as a person. Because somebody has to hold the license. So if the license is a corporation or limited liability company that owns that property, they are defined as a person under this ordinance. It's just illegal.
Yes, trying to stop the loopholes.
Yes. So if you want to change the title to person or
No.
entity,
Uh,
okay, we're defining a renter.
Renter, as used in this ordinance, a renter is the occupant or renter of a short-term rental pursuant to a rental agreement whose name and signature appear on the rental agreement. The term renter, as used herein, does not include guests of the occupant or renter who are visiting between the hours of what? No, that doesn't make sense. Does not include guests of, guests of the renter. Okay, gotcha. Guests of the occupant or guests of the renter who are visiting between the hours of 7 AM and 11 PM.
In other words, we get a noise complaint at 2:30 in the morning, and it's not the 4th of July weekend. Okay, the deputy responds, and he wants to talk to the person in that building who has signed the rental agreement, so he can issue them a warning or a citation. This defines the renter as the person that signed for that rental agreement. I want to talk to him.
Responsible person.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on. The first red letters.
Now are we only just? Is everybody's head spinning sufficiently? Mine is.
Can we order lunch?
Now, we'll knock it off at noon.
Yeah, 9 more minutes.
Yes, sir.
Close.
The part in red there that says a minimum of not less than 7 days.
Yeah.
What about the 3 major holiday periods?
Okay.
Memorial weekend,
Yeah, I don't agree.
4th of
Okay,
July.
this is a general, when we get to R1 special regs, okay, we can address that issue. This is for the entire township. Okay, we have to look at this 2 ways. We're trying to solve problems in R1,
We're defining the
Okay.
term short-term rental.
right? You want to read it or you want me to?
I don't think it should have a minimum for sure. Well,
Can you read it, please?
it should be 1 to.
Well, minimum would,
Yes, let me read it. Short-term rental, a short-term rental means a dwelling unit in which guests, transient, are provided lodging. I don't think it would be guests, I think it would be renters. But anyways, provided lodging for a period of less than 30 days. And I don't think you should have a minimum on that, because
we'll get to that when we get to it.
in return for payment, and which the dwelling is not occupied by the owner or caretaker. Okay,
Basically, we could move the minimum to, R1 under special regs. But that is in there at the suggestion of several people to eliminate the weekend warrior syndrome, where a fraternity from Ferris State or whatever crams 15 people on the beach for a weekend, okay, and do nothing but terrorize the place. The minimum basically says you're gonna rent this for a week, not just Friday and Saturday.
But what you're saying here is that if somebody stays less than 7 days, it's not considered short-term rental. So if I rent, or somebody rents their property out for 6 days, they're not falling under this whole,
yeah, that's your definition of a
that's your
short-term
definition
rental.
of a short-term rental. So I think you should just take that out. I mean, because if you rent for 3 days, or just what you're saying.
Okay, so we're defining the short-term rental.
About 7
So
days less.
if we take the minimum out, and address it in R1 special regulations. Basically, with a caveat, okay, we can, no less than 7 days. All right, so anyway, this now reads, for a period, lodging for a period of, less than 30 days in return for payment. And is not occupied by the owner or caretaker.
Right.
All right, is that satisfactory?
The 7 days.
We just scratched it.
Okay.
Move it back to R1 when we get to that discussion, because that's gonna be, another fiasco. Okay,
Zoning administrator, the appointed officer of Clearwater Township to effect proper administration of this ordinance. What is, I think the zoning administrator definition might be more than that. What is the township definition of a zoning administrator? But I mean, for this, you just want to know that that's the person.
right, basically, it's the enforcement officer. In other words, the zoning administrator would be in charge, that department, zoning. Okay, would take care of the administration and enforcement. Let's put that in there. And enforcement of the ordinance. Now, that was in there, basically for budgeting purposes, because to keep track of all this stuff and to initiate it, we're gonna need some help. Okay, so, that is addressed, under, licensing and fees. So, the fees should be sufficient to basically accommodate the enforcement and the administration of this ordinance. So we'll discuss that when we get down there. So that would be amended to include the effect of proper administration and enforcement of this ordinance. Okay, the zoning board of appeals, carry on.
You're defining who your zoning administrator is, and then you go to zoning board of appeals and you don't define it at all. You just say that they shall hear all appeals concerning the enforcement.
The zoning board of appeals is established under, the, zoning ordinance 22.
So that should say
Those are
established.
established.
So actually, if you want to look at that, we could put in parentheses ordinance 22 on both of those.
Yeah,
Ordinance 22 zoning. So there and under the board of appeals, same.
so then if anybody, wants to
So they want-
really know what's
wanna
a
know
zoning administrator, they go.
What authority and duties and responsibilities of either one of these are, they can go to ordinance 22 and look it up.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, before we get into this.
Yeah, we're not gonna jump into
I
licensing because it's
move to
11:57. Yeah,
Madam Chair,
public comment.
one question. And I got here a couple minutes late, so you may have already addressed this. Non-conforming lots, and I understand that we are gonna have a grandfather period for the ones that are already existing, but going forward in the future, are you gonna permit these type of things, short-term rentals on non-conforming lots?
That would fall under ordinance 22 special use. For non-conforming lots, there's an entire section in the zoning ordinance that deals with that. They would have to apply to the zoning planning commission for a special use permit. Which I would assume,
Provision to not allow them on non-conforming
well,
lots?
we could address that too.
Right, that's why I'm just mentioning.
So you want restrictions on non-conforming, actually,
Yeah, and I'm not saying we should do it one way or other, I'm just saying you should at least address it.
non-conforming. Okay. All right, so we would need a date and time to continue this.
I thought there was public comment.
Yes, let's set the date and time for the next meeting, and I'll get to that. We want to do this again Saturday?
No, I have election coming up.
Oh, God.
No, not this month. I won't be here. I mean, if you wanna go ahead and do it without me.
Well, the thing about it is,
I'm the one with all the questions,
no, I wanna get this to the lawyer. I wanna get this done. I wanna get it organized so that we may, over the summer, start implementing this.
But you can't.
Hmm?
But you cannot. You might be able to do going forward, but
Well, we need to get the application process sorted out. We need to find out, basically how much work this is gonna entail. We need to know the number of SDRs that are probable to be applied, so that we can actually stagger some of this work or farm it out. We need to know if we need extra help, full-time or part-time, for the zoning administrator. So all of this, and then we can get into the license application for next year, because I know that if you're renting these things for the summer, you have reservations a year or 2 or 3 in advance.
Yes.
So if we're gonna restrict any of that, we have to know, and we have to know how, and we have to be fair about it. So, yes, I'm trying, if we can do this Saturday with a quorum, we're available.
Let's just put a date for, have everything done if possible by the fiscal year.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
Okay, and, so if you can be available Saturday, I can be available Saturday. I know,
Are you talking about this
Please.
coming Saturday?
I don't
I
think I
mean,
am.
next Saturday?
next Saturday, unless,
Saturday.
Tim.
No,
hmm,
I
Yeah.
can't.
the 10th.
no, that's city effect then.
There's I just have too many events going on that Saturday.
Hmm?
It's the Heritage Committee Spaghetti Dinner. I
Yes,
have
yeah,
other,
we got lots
Okay.
going on that day. What day is the election again that you're gonna be busy?
early voting
27th.
starts the 17th.
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 So 17th you'll be busy and the 20.
Goes all the way to the
busy?
27th. Early voting goes all the way through to the 27th, to election day. I mean, except for one day.
Yeah, March 2nd.
March 2nd would be the earliest I could do it.
That's 14 days. That gives me time to dress this out, make the corrections that we got. What's that?
It is rented in the morning?
She's checking.
Oh, she's looking. Oh, I thought you said she was.
So what day are you talking, March 2nd?
March 2nd.
Would be March the 2nd. We had a conflict with
Election,
the election. and
Johnny election.
Evidently.
presidential primary.
Heritage Committee spaghetti dinner.
Yeah,
Which I have tickets for, if anybody would like.
Yeah, I may have two. Okay. Also, did you?
I appreciate everybody's patience. Mine is very thin. But progress, however slight, is imminent.
did you open up for public comment?
Yeah, well, let's come up with a date here and a
I'll
time.
be here. How far ahead it goes, you got it, Angie? Six.
What day were you thinking about? March 2nd.
2025.
I see,
Thanks.
I go to
My
March
phone out.
4th and I don't see anything here.
I don't see anything either.
On March the 2nd for the community center, it's open.
Yep, it looks like it here.
Okay, 10 a.m.
Just wait a minute.
March 2nd, huh?
March 2nd.
Yep, no, no,
Because
no.
it jumps from the 29th to the 4th, it's not in between.
So March 2nd,
March 2nd, 10 a.m. here.
everybody got that? March 2nd.
Okay,
Gives everybody a break to think.
public comment,
10 o'clock, right, sir?
10 o'clock. Trying to salvage some of the Saturday.
I have public comment.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. First, let me say that I have the utmost respect for everybody that serves this. I I personally am getting tired of coming to these meetings, it's concerned and wary of my property rights. But here you guys are doing it all the time, every month, every night, every week. And I don't know how you personally do it. So I do have the utmost respect, and I believe everybody's inherently good. But in some of the things that I've read here, I think there are some mistakes and some limitations that apply to R1, in that I would ask for a raise of hands, but I don't even think I need to. I don't believe there's anybody on the board of the planning commission that didn't previously have an understanding and awareness of what was taking place in R1 with residential owners renting out their properties. In fact, I have meeting minutes where as much has been said so in the past. And like this group, the forefathers of this township never would have imagined that in the future, there would be any reason to say that visitors coming to the area for a short term would need to be defined, because it was an understood practice in many areas of R1, maybe not all areas of R1, but certainly along Crystal Beach Road, which has historically been lodges and cottages that have been shuttered and used and rented. The person that sold property said that his father came up and rented the house next door back in the 40s or 50s. And it was that which then inspired them to buy the property next door and knock down an old cottage and build, et cetera, et cetera. It's been happening forever. So the forefathers, the reason that you're saying that it's illegal, it's not true. It's a use of words. Nobody ever thought that they would have to say it was or wasn't illegal, because it was just part of the community. So maybe Crystal Beach Road is not zoned correctly as R1. It was always lodges and cottages, which were used for rent to families, and families are good, right? We want the families. We don't want the Fair State, football team coming up to rent. So to say that it's always been illegal is a misuse.
It's been as illegal
never
as
been defined.
long as the zoning ordinance was adopted.
When was
That's when it became, quote, illegal, because it wasn't sanctioned under our zoning ordinance. I understand where you're going. I want to protect the legacy owners here. My family has had a place in East Jordan since the 60s. Okay, if somebody from Charlevoix County, which is where it is at the south end, came in and said, you can't do this, I'd get upset too. We own 40 acres. We're not bothering anybody. We don't rent this place out. It's for family use only. I understand that, but I understand how I would feel if somebody did the same thing to me. But what we're trying to do is preserve some semblance of community here. We either turn it into a strip like Las Vegas or Traverse City,
Definitely don't.
okay? Or we try to preserve a neighborhood.
Isn't that going forward though? Don't the owners in R1, but it's been understood historically, have those
We can
rights?
address that when we get to R1 special regs. If you want to exempt them from some of these things. But on the other hand, we're trying to control what's going on there. We need a method of enforcement for obvious complaints and misbehavior. Because a lot of these people that come up here for vacation, they're on vacation. We paid our $3,000 for the week or whatever the hell it is. We're gonna party down, and the neighbors be damned.
Well, why don't we punish those people that do that? Why do we punish the people that do short-term rentals, that employ people that have?
Because not everybody is a responsible owner.
But
And not everybody lives here.
Let's leave it at public comment and not argue the,
Okay,
Let's punish the people that really create these disturbances.
when we get to
Let's
those things,
let's look at the real problems, and the real problems are those people.
exactly, but we have to have some way of enforcing the real problem.
Let's create
But
ordinance.
that's in our ordinances,
Yeah.
the noise and the blight and those types of things.
We have to enforce
Okay, and how are we gonna pay those?
by fines.
Yeah.
Okay, and the
Fine citations, those do exist, where they can exist,
They can't.
noise and violations. Without restricting the rights of property owners that have been doing this for years. I tell you what, I would love it if I have a rowdy group of people, I would love for the sheriff to show up and issue a $500 citation.
And how do we-
Just like
how do we- Okay, all right,
it is.
Can I make a public comment, please?
we had,
Mr. Sorensen would like to say something.
yes, sir.
Hi, I really appreciate, I want to echo the words that the other gentleman just said regarding utmost respect for you dealing with it as a board. It's greatly appreciated. If I remember way back when, probably before I was born, when the automobile was invented, there was no speed limits. But because people abused the roads and abused speeds, we had to put speed limits on. And when the buildings started being built up in houses and houses weren't built correctly, all of a sudden we had to have building restrictions. We find ourselves in the same place, and it's extremely unfortunate for the responsible property owners that do take care of who they rent to, etc. We appreciate that, but there is way too many that don't take care of it, or they're abusing the privilege of being up north in our lovely lands now. These ordinances have to be put in place. It's unfortunate the time has to be spent on it, but they have to be there so we can control it. Things change, yes, but they've been taken way too far. I've only been there 4 years, so I'm a newbie. I get it. But what I've seen happen in just the 4 years I've been here is absolutely incredibly bad. And I appreciate what's happening. I also appreciate what the other gentleman just said, who owns property on Crystal Beach Road. But this ordinance has to be put in place. And I appreciate what everyone's doing to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment?
I have a tax question. People can't answer this for you. The CPA tells you one thing, the lawyer tells you something else. If you are using your home for a rental, you have income. You cannot write off the whole thing. So all these people that have got these homes that are homesteading them, that's not right. Can they homestead it and rent it out?
That's a good
That's
question.
business.
They have to be.
So if you're gonna go in and give licenses, are you gonna check this? If this person's homesteading this 100%, he can't rent it out.
That's a tax issue, yes.
Yeah, so you guys cannot allow this to go on by not checking that out. You
Okay.
know what I'm saying? You'd be
So-
aiding and abetting them in doing something illegal.
So if what you're saying is, here's the problem I have with that. Okay, if it's under the Homestead Act, it has to be their primary residence. They have to live there more than 6 months out of the year. Okay,
6 months, 1 day.
yes, so therefore, it's a homeowner occupied business if it's done in the summertime. If there's snowbirds, they take off down south and rent it. Now they're of course, if it's over 30 days, I need to see a lease agreement. There's a lease agreement. That's between them and the IRS and the state.
Yeah, well, you know, like our lawyer says, well, you run it out too many weeks out of the year, therefore you have to claim only, 75% homesteader. So, but then your CPA tells you a different way. So if you guys are gonna get in the middle of this, somebody's gotta be able to tell them. When you do this short-term rental, when you apply for this license.
What tax implications are involved.
Yes.
And now, and you're
Go in and say, well,
And you're
100%
speaking
homestead.
specifically about homestead
Yeah.
exempt properties.
So if you're homesteaded, 100%. Can you give them a license?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, if it's all. You're saying.
All right, good point. I never thought of that.
This thing out, you're making money from it, it's no longer.
Yeah.
You can't home good.
That would be a question for our tax assessor.
Yes, you can't home good, but.
I asked her if you do a percentage of a homestead, and she said she never heard of that. It depends on who gets what answer you.
Yeah, I know.
So, you know, accountants gotta
Yeah.
figure that out, because you can't just give a license out, it's not tax.
Well, we would, if this is a homestead tax exempt property, you would check, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then find out what tax implications. Basically, who do you report your income to? Because you are classified as a homeowner occupied business at that point.
You have to do it every month, and you have to pay an annual.
It's a good point though, so.
Yeah, we've been trying to figure it out for a while.
Any other public comment? So we can salvage part of this.
You live there, you can.
Okay, hearing none, motion to adjourn. Reconvene, March the second, 10 a.m. to continue
And we will.
at articles licensing.
12:15 meeting adjourned. Thank you for joining.
I do.
It's on your tab.
Well,